Brian, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
That's an absolute pleasure, Michael.
Mate, you've lived a life that would probably span 2 of these podcasts.
I've got the time now, so
Well, this is long form, so you can. We've got all the time in the world.
it's my new formed profession is doing podcasts now. You see,
We're going to get into your life, but did you look back on your life and go, "Shit, I was privileged"?
oh, definitely. You know, I always never took it for granted that I was looking after, some of the cream of the world's entertainment industry, and yeah, it was just a buzz, all those years.
And it seems like your life's been in chapters, and I feel like, is there another chapter left? I'm sure there is, but I mean, in regards to something new, or is it scaling back and just living the quiet life now?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I retired the first time, when I sold the restaurant, sold the venue, and went on a sabbatical, definitely the first year was I wasn't going to put any pressure on myself or my wife and I at all. And the first year went by incredibly quick and rolled into the second. We were enjoying it so much, we said, well, let's do it all over again. So we're just coming up and we've just completed the 2-year mark. And I guess, yeah, the niggle of what am I going to do, what's my purpose? I know I've got lots of energy still left, but what I'm going to do, I don't know yet. I'd love to do some dabbling. It won't be probably a business that involve staff or, cooking or, I don't think. But yeah, it hasn't grabbed me yet.
Did you expect it to? I mean, after having the break after the Lizotte stuff, and which we'll get into later, but did you expect it to be still at this point in life, just going, I just don't know what we're going to do yet?
Yeah, it was kind of like that, and there was no pressure. I didn't have any. It was not anything sense of urgency either. I just went. First time in my life, I didn't have to have a schedule or, be running up and down freeways or going in and out and replacing staff or, it really was the most incredible feeling to finally go, I can actually take some time for myself and really visit and spend quality time with my family. And that was what it was all about really at the start. And now 2 years later, I'm, can't wait to see my grandkids again. And I don't know whether, I don't want to jump into something that's too full-time or too demanding, because I thought, I did that for a long time.
The research that I did for this, I get a feeling that you always knew when to finish, when to wrap things up. You knew when something was ready to jump into something new or the next step.
Well, that's an interesting comment. I mean, I'd have to say, yeah, the timelines that we took, that in particular, Joe and I, we were a team. There's no two ways about it. I mean, my name might be out there, but Joe had a lot to do with our building of where we went over the years with the catering business. To start off with, maybe there was me, but then once we got out of Sydney and moved up to the Central Coast and started the restaurants, it was really it was a team effort. But yeah, we put a lot of time into planning and what we would do next, and I had a vision for sure that I was going to be all the way up the Eastern Seaboard and all of those things, the TV shows and it was all on the cards. I mean, I was going big for a long time there, and then it sort of, the writing was on the wall to say maybe we'll just cut it back a little bit, and when we closed 2 restaurants and just concentrate on Newcastle, and it was in increments and it did come quite naturally, but it wasn't always on time.
No,
we choked for a long time, and then COVID hit. So it was kind of changed everybody's lives, I'm sure.
Totally, and also too the fact that you only lived in the same street as Lizotte's, now Flamingo's Live, but you could pretty much see it from your corner. Is that Was that hard at times to be living? And I know I spoke to you off camera just before. Was it hard living in that same street, being so close to work? So sometimes that's a good thing, but sometimes that's a bad thing.
I would never, I never made it, never felt like a bad thing, 100%. That was probably one of the best things I ever did was buy that old Freemasons Hall, and it's a beautiful spot. But just to be up the road was hard. It was easy for us, not hard at all. To be only so many years, I went up and down the freeway and spent hours on the road every day, and that was a joy to just pop home, for a cuppa.
Was there times when you thought, you know what, I'm not going to be there tonight? You always hire good staff, which is so important to any business. But was it a case of you always had to be there? Some bosses just love being there. I'm not saying you're a control freak or anything like that, but was that a thing where you always wanted to be in the premises?
Yeah, a hands-on approach was always, it was high priority listed of success for a business, because in the business that we had, people wanted to see us present, and I cared. I cared about my customers and the artists themselves. And I mean, I always said, if you look after the artist, the rest of it looks after itself. It's if the artist is happy and they love playing, in a venue, then everything was going to be just fine. And my goal back in my catering days, it was like, we looked after the artists and the crew, and that was the first and foremost thing. And it had to be a hands-on thing. You couldn't wheel in. And I mean, when I had a good team and I had the 3 restaurants, and I would just, some nights it would be, it was an absolute joy to walk into my room sometimes. They were all working well, and that was a pleasure, and I could just swoon, and didn't have to be. But a lot of the times we had to go back on the tools, and it was...
well, that's the thing too, I suppose. If you went to the restaurant, people go, "Where's Brian?" Where it's almost like when you see these celebrity chefs that open restaurants. People go in there, well, where's Gordon Ramsay?
Yeah.
Where is he? And they get disappointed.
Can't be everywhere all the time.
Can't happen. Yeah. And then, to be honest, just getting back to keeping the artists happy, we did a live show a few weeks ago, and Dave and I can contest that we all got a meal, before the show, and I was like, "What's this? We're getting food. This is how good,
Catering and everything."
You think when like you mentioned, when an artist gets there and has a full belly of food and you treat it right, he's going to perform, or he or her is going to perform at their best.
Yeah, it changes the atmosphere tenfold. It's the customers, the punters benefit big time because they got a happy person that wants to be there. A lot of the times they're cutting songs off their set list because the place that they're playing is such a dive, and all they want to do is get out of there. But yeah. I'd like to think that was the opposite for all those years that I looked after people. Well,
Dave, how was your bangers and mash?
It was delicious. I'll happily give Flamingos Live a plug there. It was awesome.
So they're carrying on the food stuff.
Yeah. It's still the same chef that I had when I left them. So
yeah.
So that's good.
It's the bones are still there. I mean, Sid, the sound guy, is still there. I tell you what, you're so professional.
Oh, we had a great time together.
Sonic Sid, he's a legend. He was with us for 25 years.
But it's funny, Sid, he mentioned he was names dropping on who was on that stage, and all of a sudden I went, holy shit, I want to rip out a floorboard and take it home with me.
There was some serious people on that stage. Yeah.
Lots of music in that area. And funny enough, I came in and gave you a quick visit on Sunday at your house, and I drove past, and it was at the Rotunda at Lambton Park. They're playing music. I'm thinking, how good is this? And for you to, I told you about it, and you went, how good's that? Because it's like kids playing music, which is so. Here it is here.
Yes, the brass band. How good's that?
Bob the Builder.
Kids will love it. It's got great history.
That Rotunda really has, hasn't it?
It sure has.
But how good is that to see young I mean, especially the life that you've lived in the industry that you've been in, to just see young people pick up an instrument, and there could be someone out of that band that goes on and does something just from being inspired.
Oh, it's probably one of my most treasured memories of working in the industry and providing venues for kids to play in. Is our initiative for the high schools and schools and universities and things to have a place to play, a real venue. School halls are one thing, but when you talk a high school, music teacher that gets to perform with his students in a real restaurant or venue environment was one of the biggest buzzes I've ever had. No, there's no two ways about it. The amount of schools in all three of the venues that we had over the years, there wasn't too many high schools or performing arts schools that weren't using us at least once or twice a year for their special nights. And grandma and grandpa would come, and mum and dad and the family, and they'd all bunk in and have a nice meal and watch little Johnny on stage. And I, as I said, it was the best thing about it was it did two things. It either gave them the opportunity to shine as a student, as a music student, and work out whether they wanted that as it may be a profession, or found out whether they had talent in the first place. But it did do two things. They either realised that that's exactly what they want to do, and they're going to follow that again, or they just turn around and say that is not for me, and there's no way that I want to do that. And either way, it's we've done our job.
That might be your next call. That might be your next calling, working with young up and comers coming through.
Well, there's definitely something. I mean, there's that's probably something that I would love to do is be involved in helping people, or helping the music industry in general, with more music, and encourage that, maybe roll out that school program, or help in some way to do that. That would be something I would definitely follow.
Or you could go into the aged care sector, because you did a bit of work for Meals on Wheels when COVID was on, didn't you?
I did a couple of years.
That's in your same street.
That's the one. I had my friends at 6 o'clock in the morning every Wednesday and Friday.
You were cooking, not delivering?
No, I wasn't cooking. I was preparing. I'd take the meals, and then we would package them up into the eskies. That all of the I know that you told me that you did some delivering. Yeah. So I wasn't a deliverer, but I was a preparer in that
God,
kitchen.
if I was running that, I would have said, "Hey, Lizotte's here. Just you get him on the tools."
It was a lot of fun over those years. We had to, it was full on COVID, so we had masks and aprons, and it was very, very tight in keeping people healthy. So we had to have tests, and it was quite strict. But the whole concept of Meals on Wheels, I've always thought, because I started, my first job was in an old people's home, in an RSL club, a home in Perth when I was about 14. So that's how I started. The hospitality was working with the elderly.
I found it just delivering. It was fulfilling, but at the same time too, I found it sad sometimes, because you go to these places and there's one person, and you're the only person that they see all day, and it's almost like they want to talk your ear off. And I'm happy to sit down, but then you're looking at this schedule going, I've got to beat the next one, because the next person's waiting. They know what time you're coming. And you get in there and you're putting it in their fridge, and even heating it up in their microwave sometimes, because it's going to take them 20 minutes to get from the couch to there.
You have to get good at it.
But the sad thing about it, it's almost like they've got relatives, and they're maybe a sign of the times in regards to how much aged care costs to put someone into a home. It's just
so many variables. I found, my experience, because my father spent quite a bit of time in his later years in aged care facility. He wasn't able to walk in the end with one of his legs, so he spent quite a long time. My mum passed in the home, which was great for the family. But when Dad reached his age and his condition. And I just always thought the food element and the entertainment element in those homes, and it was always then, and I just always felt for them because they weren't really being, the budgets were so small. And then just recently, well, not so recently, it was a little while ago, but Maggie Beers did the program on telly, and I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe I could do something like that as well, or be a help in that area to deliver some more entertainment and some better food quality in aged care facilities. So.
It's funny. We had Wayne Rogers who took over Lizotte's, to Flamingos Live now, and he mentioned he still does a lot of drag gigs in nursing homes, and he said it's almost like these are people that don't come out of their rooms normally.
They would love that.
Out, and they think it's the highlight of their week,
of course.
And he just loves doing it, and also too the aged care sector, it's just off the charts now. I mean, I know so many people that are getting into being a carer with the NDIS and all that sort of stuff. It's almost like it's changed. Like, years ago it was like, I'm leaving my job because I've got a job in the mines. Now it's like, I'm leaving my job because there's a good money in it.
Yes.
But there's so much of it, which I don't know, good and bad in a way, just the way I suppose, people are, as they get older, they need more high care.
Yeah, I would just like to think that we are going in the right direction, and people really do need to, consider these jobs because they're a really important part of community. And for me, with our parents getting to that age, and to be better looked after by more credible people that actually want to do that for a living. That's important, not just a job, and not just to throw them in the aged care facilities, but someone that truly wants to look after them and look after their well-beings.
Yeah, and also being a full-time grandparent, that'd be, you and Joe would be keep you on your toes.
Yeah, we don't. When we're with them, it's full-time. There's no two ways about it.
What's?
Oh yes, well,
what's
the
their
twins,
names?
Bonnie and Layla.
I'm glad that you don't dress them the same then.
Oh, they'll never. They're quite different. But yes, they used to love the restaurant. They'd run around and go up on the stage, and they spent a lot of time with us in the business and coming to visit Joe and I. And we've got another granddaughter as well on top of that with that family. And then my eldest daughter has a young 3-year-old, and also she has twins as well from her partner's first marriage as well. So I've got 6 grandchildren.
Wow, that'll keep you on your toes.
Oh yeah.
They say terrible 2s. I reckon it's terrible 3s, to be honest.
You just get in and you dive in.
But imagine, I don't know. I mean, you're a family had seven kids. That would have kept your parents on your toes.
Absolutely. They're it's 7 kids back in those days too. Good Catholic family, and we were brought up pretty much. I don't have many memories. Yeah, we were. There's a few unhappy faces there, but most of us are all right.
Because that was it was in America, wasn't it? The East Coast of America before you came out to Australia.
Yeah, we were all born, or most of us were born in Fall River, Massachusetts, in the New England area. Yeah, and we lived in Rhode Island for those first years, and I was about 8 when we left America. Yeah, so big family. Lots of, and coming to Australia was an absolute, you got to be kidding. You're going to a lot of people when we first announced, my mum and dad first announced, it was, what are you going to Austria for? They don't even speak English. So that's back in the 1970. That was a big thing,
Yeah. What age did you leave home?
I left home about 16, 17. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so 17.
That's a lot different to these days.
Yeah. Oh yeah, God. We were the first, it was never any doubt. It was like, when are we going to leave home? Now the kids don't even consider it after when they're 30.
Well, that's the problem. Well, the problem is, I suppose, the cost of living, the rents and stuff like that, and probably in a way too, there's a lot of families, a lot of couples that probably plan their retirement and they didn't bank on the kids staying till they're 30, and they're probably going, hang on, we've got to revisit this, but it's a real thing. I mean, imagine if the 7 of you guys didn't leave home, your parents would have went nuts.
Well, we travelled everywhere. There was never any time where all of us were at home once we arrived in Australia, because for very short amounts of time we were all together, and then one would move out to, a couple went from Perth back to Sydney and down to Melbourne, and then my elder brother Michael, he ended up moving to Tasmania. So we were never, it was pretty much there was only 3 of us by the time we got to Perth. It was only myself, my younger brother, and my sister Donna, and then Mum and Dad decided they were going to bring us back to America. So in 1976 we ended up, hoofing back from Perth back to the United States, and that was a hard slog, because they made mistakes. So
yeah.
2 years later, we were back in Australia.
Well, I was going to say, when they first came out to Australia, they were at the Villawood Hostel, Albury, and then they drove to Perth in a station wagon. They were like the first Griswolds.
Six. We had an HR station wagon with bench seat in the back, and then so there was 3 in the front, 3 in the back, and then Mark and I in the dog box in the back with the dog. Yeah.
It's experiences like that always stick in your mind, isn't it?
Yeah. It was just no seatbelt. Mark and I literally on the wheel arches, him with one and me the other wheel arch.
Well, just with 7, just staying on that, when was the last time you had a family Christmas where everyone was there?
The last time we were able to be together was for my father's memorial. We spread his ashes about 3 or 4 years ago in Tasmania, and it was a wonderful. None of us had been together 35 years. That there was all 7 children.
Wow,
was a phenomenal thing. I like to think that I helped cause it, because I was quite stubborn about it, wanting it to happen. So I kept planting the seed with all my brothers and sisters, and finally they all agreed that we could do it, and we picked a date, and obviously it was my mum's birthday.
Yeah.
And we all went to Cradle Mountain in Tasmania, and first time for 35 years.
Wow.
So we even got T-shirts made, and
beautiful.
It was pretty special. Yeah.
You went over to America and Europe as a bartender and waiter. That would have been an experience.
Yeah.
Did that serve you well in regards to going forward in a career in hospitality?
Oh, most definitely. I left. I was. When I left to go overseas, it was always going to be in hospitality. And then I met my brother's girlfriend in London, and she said she was doing some catering in a studio for some bands.
Yep.
And so that's how my catering business started off. So I wasn't always cooking, but when I came back, went straight into catering. So that's what kick-started the catering career. But I definitely was a waiter and a bartender, and I made some crepes in the south of France. I worked in a creperie bar.
Wow.
For 6 months, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And hospitality's, I always tell the youth of today, it's like the hospitality industry is the best one. If you want to travel, it's going to be the one that's going to.
You always seem to get work.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's another thing too. I mean, you ran a good tight ship at Lizotte's. I mean, do you feel that the standard of hospitality has gone down a little bit over time? What's
different, Michael, these days is that I think there's a less emphasis on it being a career. Whereas when I started out, it was definitive career. I mean, if you went into catering and cooking, and it was a career that you were a waiter was a career. A professional hospitality person in working in restaurants and hotels. It was, we did a hotel management and catering diploma as a career, and the amount of jobs that would come out of that were endless. So you could do all sorts of things using that, but less now than ever. The hospitality industry is not as much of a career aspect anymore. It's just something you do while you're studying, or it's become more that, and it's a bit disappointing. I still think that there's too many restaurants going under, because they're not preparing themselves enough with enough experience and enough knowledge and the mechanics.
Remember when McDonald's was like, if you worked at, this is years ago, if you worked at McDonald's, that was a great thing to have on your resume for your next job. It was like you worked at McDonald's, but and I don't know whether it was because at the time it was owned by McDonald's, the restaurant, and when they started to franchise them out, sort of the standard of the service sort of go down. You go to a drive-through now. Once it was, that was really polite and what would you like? Can we take your order, please? Now it's just like, what do you want? And it's like, where did we go?
To be honest, I haven't been to McDonald's in about 20 years. I drive by them, but I don't know.
Believe me, Brian, that's
the
what
services
happens.
Okay.
I can vouch for that.
Going back to if someone was from a McDonald's background, I would definitely put that as a tick.
Yeah.
In employing them, because it gave them discipline, it gave them great hygiene standards and dress standards, and obviously they have a strict regime that they go through. So I would always encourage, and definitely they would be put higher on the list if they had some background like that in some hospitality already. So.
Yeah, just getting back to your brothers and sisters, your dad made sure that there was an extra musical instrument in the house. So there's a lot of musical instruments there. The trombone was your preferred?
For me, it was, yes. I mean,
did Mark knock you out of the way to get the guitar early? Or?
Well, Mark started out with trombone too, and then he went to
the cello.
Yeah. So he had this box cello that was like this, this very unusual shaped cello to start off with, and he'd start playing riffs on it, and then my brother gave him a bass guitar, and he'd wake me up. I'd be on the bottom bunk, he'd be on the top bunk, wailing away, and I'd have to wake up to that in the morning.
There you go.
And so it was always. Yeah, we never used to have to fight for the trombone. That ended up being mine for sure. But
did the trombone get the ladies? Did it like, do you want to come back and see my trombone?
It definitely wasn't a chick puller. There's a lot of trombone jokes that go down. Don't start that, Michael. Don't start with it.
Well, we've got a video which I'm going to just play it, and I want you to explain what this is about.
Well, that was
before you say anything. It looked like the bloody cows were enjoying it too.
They loved it, but it was. I ripped it. It's not my original idea, unfortunately. I can't take credit for that. But there's a social media stunt that was done by a Texan. That's why I wore the cowboy hat and everything. But he sits out in his paddock with an old folding chair, and sits out in his paddock, and he's playing away, and then the cows come over the hill, and that's what we did. They literally came over the hill, came down the hill, and followed the music, and so we played for about half an hour, and it worked basically. So I after seeing that little snippet, I said, "Oh, I've got to do that." So, and that was one of my ex-chefs working at the restaurant. He's got a property out near Taree. So he invited me. I said, "Well, I'm going to bring the extra trombone." So I grabbed a trombone off the wall of the restaurant, and then we recorded that with two trombones.
We'll have to call you the cow whisperer. So there's another
there's a job.
There's another job. I mean, by the end of this podcast, we are going to work out what you're going to do next. I swear. But
I'll start ticking the boxes.
But you've also appeared on stage with your brother Mark with a trombone. I think we got some pics there too. But
I've done.
Look at that.
Mark's been very good to me and giving me my the ability to get up from time to time, and I've done a lot of recording on a lot of his albums.
Is the royalty still
my
rolling in?
brother Michael on sax, and my dad played a lot of things. Yeah, the royalty's still waiting for those. So yeah, if you're listening, Mark, no.
Is it a case of
it's a going joke? It's like I would pay him, to play. It's because it's such a joy to get up there, and I've had a ball. I really have.
Well, you know so many big names now in the industry. Do you ever ring up Jimmy Barnes and say, hey, do you need a solo trombone in the next album? Like I know the person.
Jimmy did do a show just before we closed that we sold, and it was just after COVID, I think, and he did ask me to play. There was a song that he threw me a song, so we got up, and then the second night I couldn't do the same because Chris Chaney was a special guest at last minute, so I got bumped.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, well, it's all right. I bumped by Chris Chaney from the living end. I thought, that'll be all right.
Well, with your dad and obviously you on your dad was the saxophone?
Yes, my dad was a tenor sax player.
And everyone else with an instrument, that would be a fairly handy band. Would it be Lizotte's worthy?
We never really got to that stage of jamming. My brother Michael and my sister Laura used to play in a band together, and Mark and my sister Laura definitely is a wonderful musician in her own right as well. She lives in Perth and has a music school, and she's an incredible musician, incredible flautist and piano player, and she's but more jazz orientated too. So we got together, and there was one time where where Laura came on and went on tour with her quartet, and she did all three restaurants. And then my brother Mark came and he was a guest as well. And then my dad and my brother. So we had the brass section, the Tassie horns, as my dad used to call them. And so that was a special moments over the years of getting together. But yeah, never to any great extent. So when it happened, it was pretty special.
I mean, music has played a massive part in your life, but you don't go down any genres. You like all types of music, don't you?
Oh,
you can't pick.
Yes, I couldn't, because growing up, and Mark, explains it really, really well when he gets interviewed, and his memory of the music that my dad used to support, and introduce us to, because his record collection was a phenomenon. It really was across the genre of almost every type of the jazz and the rock and the blues, and he really did have a great taste in music. He hated trad jazz, which was just tainted us, and he'd complain about any trad nights that were at the jazz club, or and so that was one thing that we didn't grow up with. But every other genre, it was great.
What was your first album you bought?
My first album that I bought. That's a good question. My first concert was Bob Marley and the Wailers at the Perth Entertainment Centre.
Not a bad start.
So my first album might have been, The Cars, maybe?
Yep.
The Cars? Yeah.
It's funny.
My best friend's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Cars, I think
you built it out. You went on to study catering and hotel management. What drew you into that? You obviously didn't watch any Fawlty Towers episodes, or
what drew me into hospitality?
Yeah.
I was going to leave high school at 16 or 15 and go off to and be a carpenter, be a cabinet maker. I wanted to do some carpentry.
Yeah.
And my mum and dad said, just do one more year of high school, So they talked me into not leaving school at year 10, and which was the best thing they ever did. And I was sitting in a lunchroom, on the quadrangle one afternoon in Scarborough in Perth, and on the PA, they said there's a hospitality, catering and hotel management diploma course starting at Career Technical College. It was the first. The college was actually brand spanking new, and it would be the first year that they'd offer this course, and it was only up the road, and just a bell came on. So that's probably the.
Imagine if you become a carpenter.
Yeah, well,
I would have been totally.
I've got I've got a son-in-law that's a great builder, and my brother-in-law was a builder, and it's that's part of the family. But I'm no builder now.
but do you look back at that now, and everyone's got that fork in the road. That was a pretty early fork in the road that led you down that path, which gets you to where you are now.
Yes. Well, I've never looked back on hospitality, that's for sure. I mean, it's just morphed into with the music. So, and I miss the music so much by having the catering business for the music industry. Once I left that and stopped being mobile, I missed the music. So it was a natural progression to bring the music back into the restaurant. So yeah, we our first restaurant that we started after we finished the catering business wasn't music. It was a little club in the Central Coast, a little RSL club.
It also seems like, I don't know, chefs these days, they're sort of like rock stars themselves, aren't they? They're prima donnas. The whole rise of, I suppose, My Kitchen Rules and all that sort of stuff, and celebrity chefs. It's, is it hard to get a chef and keep a good one? Because they seem to get offered gigs everywhere these days.
Well, yeah, that's always the hardest thing is your staff. But yeah, finding a good chef, especially if you've got 2 and 3 restaurants, like I did for a while. We had 75 staff between the 3 restaurants, so a lot of chefs. And on a busy night, you need 5 and 6 trustworthy guys in the kitchen and to keep the engine room going. So yeah, we did try and work with guys that really did have a good, outlook on, the rock and roll side of things was very important. They had to be rock and roll wise, and not too starchy,
Random question here. Brussels sprouts.
Love them.
Well, I love them now, but now that you go to these restaurants and they're cooking them up in some way, and I'm going, if my mum did this, I would have been. Now I can just eat a massive bowl. Just bring me a bowl of Brussels sprouts. I'll just eat them all. But it's funny how things can change. Your food tastes.
Butchered them before, didn't they?
Well, it's a little bit like pizzas. Remember, we used to get a pizza and you used to get the olives and the little black olives, and you go, and it wasn't until like late 30s someone said to me, I think it was an NBN cameraman. He went into a deli. He says, "Eat this olive," and I went, "I don't eat olives." "No, we're not leaving this deli until you eat this olive." And it was stuffed with feta.
Oh, yeah.
And I just went, "Oh, Jesus, that's great," And I'm like, "What?" It's almost those bad experiences can put you off food for a long time, and all of a sudden we're eating it again.
Yeah, well, we just got back from Turkey and some of the best olives in the world there. So don't get me started with olives. Oh my God.
What I'm trying to say is, I suppose our food culture's got a lot better over the years, hasn't it?
Oh, 100%. Our affection for good food it is very competitive these days, and so it should be. The produce that's out there, and people being more more adventurous in their own kitchens, and we have it's good and bad things came from TV cooking shows, but the majority of the time it's lifted the game in the home kitchen, and for our children, very important for them to cook. And I love cooking with my grandkids. We make pasta, and it's a special thing.
At Elk Architecture, we don't just design buildings, we shape the spaces where life happens. From concept to construction, our award-winning architects bring our vision to life with precision, passion, and purpose. Whether it's your dream home or your next big commercial project, trust Elk Architecture to build what matters most. Elk Architecture, designed for life, built for the future.
You cook for some very famous people. Joe Cocker, how did he like his shepherd's pie? Did he have one every night?
Just about. Yeah, he was. There was Joe Cocker that really did. Yeah, he requested that most. The shows that we did. There was people. I have another big memory. Michael Crawford requested minted peas and lamb cutlets every night before his show for 5 o'clock dinner. So for about 5-6 shows in a row, he would have the same meal at the same time. And it was like, so there's a few funny stories about artists and their.
Well, we're going to get into them, but how much pressure is there doing that? I mean, it's pressure cooking for anyone. But
we never used to take it too. I mean, we took it serious because we wanted a happy artist. But I don't think there was ever a time where we ever were too intimidated with it, because they are, most of the time, 99% of the time, artists are very, very comfortable, and backstage is where they really do relax, and you've got to respect that. And a lot of the home cooked element is what they really yearn for, because they're on the road, they're eating in restaurants, they're eating in hotels, they're eating all, so to have that sort of home cooked environment and requesting.
Is that also something you've learned down the track in regards to when you bought Lizotte's, when you just said before, you keep an artist happy, they produce their goods. It's almost like you knew this from years of doing this.
Yeah, it's an integral part of the artist being, their backstage catering. It's the most important thing for the band. A lot of the times they travel on their stomach is a good phrase, and if they need their food to keep them happy, it's if they don't get home cooked and whatever they want in backstage, then it becomes very difficult for them to stay fit and well and healthy.
So how did More Than a Morsel come about, the catering business? That was with Jep?
Yeah, she was. Then time was my brother's girlfriend,
yeah.
And she mentioned to me that she was doing some recording studio catering back in Sydney. And so when I came back to Sydney, I gave her a call and said, "Hey, I'd love to work with you, and we could make this an ongoing thing." And she agreed to do that. And for the first year and a half, we worked. It might have been a couple of years, and she went later on, started a family, and I broke off on my own, and that became it was. Just the studio itself was the start of it, and then through the studio, catering for a lot of albums.
The Rhinoceros?
Yeah, that was called Rhinoceros Recording Studio.
And that was owned by In Excess, or part owned?
Part owned by In Excess. Yep. And so we did some of the most incredible albums. They were all huge selling albums that. We did Wendy Matthews, Immigré. We did the Jimmy Barnes 2 Fires album. We did Midnight Oil.
Ian Moss.
The Blue Sky Mining album, the Ian Moss Matchbook album. Yeah, so there was some of the biggest albums in the 90s were recorded in that studio. So we got to know these guys very well, and it became part of their lives for quite a few months while they were in the studio.
I mentioned to you the other day about that, how you were in these studios watching, I suppose, history being recorded. And I went to watch the Bruce Springsteen movie, and there was that scene, and I know you've seen it as well, where,
fabulous
movie. Yeah, it was magnificent. Jeremy Allen White just absolutely killed it playing Springsteen. But when they're recording Born in the USA, it's almost like everyone recording it's looking at each other going, this is a banger. This is going to last the test of time here. They knew. Is that sometimes that was a feeling, sometimes, especially with the Kick album, with the In Excess, some of the stuff that they put on that, you're looking at going,
I was privy. I'd get in, not all the time, but a lot of the time, there was a bit of waiting. So they would, bands would invite me in to have a listen. And I'd just be, fly on a wall, sitting in the back couch, trying to just take it all in. It was pretty special. I got privy to quite a few major hits before they ever hit the airwaves, And it was a very special time.
Did you learn more about the artists back in the days in the studio? It's just eating with them sort of thing, and they seem to open up when they're eating food. It's almost like food sort of makes people bring down the barriers.
Oh, almost. It's when an artist feels most comfortable is when they're backstage and their dinner. That's the real person. That's the real deal right there. And so the respect has to be, you're not star crazy, and you let them just be. And it's the staff that I had all had to understand that, and it's sort of unheralded, just an agreement that they won't bother the artists and just let them be. And
it's almost like if they want to talk, okay, but
Yes.
it's almost like
and
that
it's
sort of thing.
And because a lot of them became friends. I spent so much time with a lot of these artists, and already some of them were my friends already. Anyway, through growing up and just being in the industry, they became friends. So it was a special, a real privilege.
It was a similar a show on ABC with Annabelle Crabb. It was called Kitchen Cabinet, where she went into the homes of the politicians and cooked for them.
Love that show.
And they were like cooking, and they were terrible cooks, but it was almost like they were so nervous. They just started talking. She's asking questions, and they're opening up, and I don't think they even realised what they were saying. But she was getting the best interview because of the fact that food was making them relaxed.
Oh, definitely. Well, I used to do an awful lot of ABC with the Central Coast in the Fishbowl, they used to call it,
Yes,
the
I remember.
Fishbowl
Yeah,
Studio.
down at Erina. Yeah.
Down at Erina with you'll tell me his name?
Not
Anyway, Scott Levi.
that's him. Yes, I worked a little bit with him because the studio moved to Gosford. So he was doing.
Yes.
I was doing a bit of news down there, and he was still doing the breakfast.
Yeah, I did many a spot with as many artists that I possibly could, and we'd cook live on air in the Fishbowl Studio, and I'd be out there with my little gas burner, and I'd be whipping up these dishes, and they'd help me prepare, and then we'd and it was always a promotion for their show, obviously. Which was great to be able to do that, and it was the commercial side of it. I always used to laugh because we weren't allowed to say Lizotte's, but that was my name, so we got away with murder. And so a lot of people would say, "Oh, they're always promoting that Lizotte's restaurant, and they shouldn't do. It's not kosher for ABC." I was like, "Well, I did it again." The phone would start ringing, and the ticket sales would take off. And
Scott Lee, he was a real character too, isn't he?
Oh, he's one of the most favourite music lovers. He just it's a world of knowledge.
The business morphed in from the studio to touring with massive names. The Beach Boys. You grew up listening to the Beach Boys.
Sure did.
Would have been a surreal moment to actually be cooking for them.
It was
in the band.
To originally, I got that gig through one of the most famous tour managers, Wayne Swampy Jarvis, back in the day. And it was probably 1990, I guess, 1991.
92.
Was it 92?
Yeah.
And business was pretty new back then, and he was touring. He knew the promoter well, and he was the tour manager. And Swampy sort of said, "I think I can get you a gig, being the Beach Boys' private chef." And I was like, "Yeah, what a something to add to my resume for that." And so I agreed to do that, and it was the most wonderful thing. They were all on the wagon. Supposedly, and so I threw in the road-cased cappuccino machine that I had, and
that was one of the first of its kind too, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, there was. Don't think there was any other road-cased cappuccino machine going around Australia then, and we used to take it, set that up next to the stairs going up to the stage, and they'd all have their little shots of espresso, when they go on. And there was a few of the band members that got naughty, and I'd have to have the bottom drawer slide up, open with a bit of Sambuca one and Cointreau another, and so it was quite funny. But
I take it there would have been
cater for a band like that was really memorable.
I take it there would have been a few little stories like that in regards to little hip flasks or for people that were supposed to be on off the drink.
Yeah, there was quite a few bands that would fall off the wagon, so to speak. But at least they were giving it a go.
But also, the names, God, look at these names dropping. Yeah, Elton John, Billy Joel, Madonna, U2, Bob Dylan, The Stones, Michael Jackson. I suppose was it a case of they were past the stage of being prats? They were like they were approachable at this stage of their career in regards to touring.
Well, the Australian promoters, we had a bit of a monopoly for a while. There was most promoters were using us as caterers, so they would ring us up, and but the majority of the time the promoters would send us the riders, and there was a few, the riders are some, the hospitality requirements backstage, and they'd want to feed all their crew, and there'd be all sorts of stipulations, and how environmentally friendly they wanted to be, and you had people like U2 that wanted all their recycling to be done, and there was initiatives that the band started doing for, especially in the 90s, Pearl Jam, and a lot of these bands would just want the catering just right. So having their own caterer made a lot of sense, and the promoters, once they realised that we were tuned in with it and we could be trusted with that, that became that became our wheel, and we just ran with it.
Was that a case of learning on the run, like when you were on tour with them? Like, was it a case of preparing before the tour started, in regards to dietary requirements for certain people, or was it a case of you're there, this is what they want, and just finding the stuff?
Yeah, a lot of times, especially when we toured with people, when you're on the venue on that night time, then the rider is very important. And if there's anything really that stands out, they're going to, you'll get a phone call, and their tour manager or their personal assistant or whoever's in charge of looking after the artist, if they are going to eat, because they get this cotton wool sort of covered around for a lot of the artists, and you don't get to really get to see them or get to know them. But if they are going to eat, they'll let you know, and we have to be ready for it. So,
and Billy Joel used to come out and more or less take the utensils off you and start stirring the pot.
Loved having to do the Billy shows, because Billy'd come into the kitchen every night and ask us what's cooking, and he'd stir the pots, and he was a genuine legend as far as his he was really hospitable. He looked after his crew, looked after his bands, and and we had a lot of fun. We took the cuisine destination was another element that we really that flourished, because we wouldn't ask them what they wanted to eat. We asked them where would they like to go. So when we did multiple shows for a lot of time, the John Farnham, I remember doing 10 shows at the entertainment centre for John Farnham, and every night we would take them somewhere different, and one night, we'd take them to the Middle East, and we'd have a belly dancer, and, we have a mariachi band came in one night. And
you brought the trombone out?
Or I terrorised them with the trombone, put them off their dinner.
Is it true that was it the same day that you got a phone call from two different promoters? One was to do...
So you've done your homework.
U2, and the other was Madonna on the same day?
Yes. Well, back in those days, Madonna was toured and U2. That's it. And so I got the phone call from Frontier Touring. At that time, Michael Chugg called me and said, "Brian, we want you to do the Madonna tour." And I said, "Yep, not a problem." And so I got off the phone, and then literally a day later, Michael Koppel rang and said, "I've got U2 on the road. I want you to do the national tour." And I was like, "Okay, no problem." And then I just went, "Oh my God, I've got to get two teams of chefs and go opposite ways around."
Don't bring any more artists out, please.
Yeah, it was like this. So one more. And we probably, during that time, we would have done an entertainment centre gig or a state theatre gig as well. So some nights we had 4 and 5 shows on in the one night. So we would have to swell to enormous amounts and stress, and I'd be travelling from one venue to another, and just... Yeah, it was quite incredible.
Was there anyone else in the game do anything like what you were doing? Because again, it seemed like you said you had the monopoly on it.
There was a couple of other caterers, but we were the first in the country. More Than a Morsel was probably the first to do a national tour with staff, and we had 25 road cases and 12 staff on the road, and we were probably the first. So we pioneered that kind of industry. Now, and it's still there's a couple of companies that are still going that were affiliations of my company, and one of my staff ended up taking on that business when they went bankrupt. So and it's still going today. So it's a pretty proud thing to know that I was responsible to start something like that for this country, because catering was was Jats business and Jats and Cabanossi and
cheese cubes.
Coon cheese.
You used to go to the bar and just open up and get a
VB. Yeah, it would be a garbage bin, and the some of them didn't even have a liner in it. At least put the liner in and then put the ice and the beers in. But that was used to be in the dressing rooms were toilets. That we would turn into Taj Mahals for people. And we became very famous for transforming dressing rooms and to the extent where Elton John would pay an enormous amount of money for us to change the male change room of the entertainment centre backstage at the Sydney Entertainment Centre into Bondi Beach. And we trucked in a whole truck of Bondi sand, and had complete with Bondi lifesavers and everything, all dressed up, and it was the most incredible tour that
wow.
one. Yeah.
What was his favourite food?
Elton, we'd never really got a chance to feed. He would never really eat at the venue. So my daughter travelled with Elton for 10 years. I was going to mention
that, yeah.
So she'd probably be able to tell you what he eats more than I would be.
Staying on that, how did that come about? How did she get that job? Was it a production assistant?
Yes, she was Elton's production assistant for over 10 years. Yeah. Wow. And she's still doing a lot of that as we speak. She's going on tour, and I think she starts a Vance Joy tour, who's doing the support for Ed Sheeran nationally. So she's going to be Vance Joy's tour manager. She started doing that when she was about 18, and with another buddy of mine who's a production manager, and so he said, "Do you think Sammy would like a job?" And I said, "I'm sure she would." So I approached her, and so she took this job, and it took her. I think the first job she ever did was AC/DC on a national tour and world tour, and so you'd start off on the big guns, and so she's never looked back really.
Yeah,
she's got some great accolades, and she's a wonderful music industry legend now. She's done really, really well for herself.
You must be very proud. You once did a hungy in New Zealand for Midnight Oil. You never done one before that, did you?
It was for the Stones, actually.
Oh, was it Stones?
Yeah, okay. It was the Rolling Stones at the Mount Smart Stadium or something, and we got the go ahead because the promoter wanted to do a hungy for the band and the band and crew, and I had to get permission from the Auckland Council to go over the fence and start digging holes. So they gave me the go ahead, and so that was incredible. It ended up being a big, huge box trailer, and we filled it up with all the burlap bags, and it was quite. And I remember not really eating. I never could eat it because it was too too earthy for me. But the crews at the end of the night, it certainly got all eaten. But it was a great ritual, and the band came, and they all. Don't know whether they ended up eating any of it, but they were present and watched us to take it out of the ground and everything, and it was a big thing. The band all arrived.
Will you do one at my place next week?
Big enough shovel, Michael. Yeah, I suppose I could.
Tired of missing out on the best properties? Stop searching, start winning. At Optimum Buyers Agency, we work for you, not the seller. We negotiate harder, we move faster, we find the homes others don't. Off-market deals, smart strategy, real results. Whether it's your first home or your forever home, we make it happen. Optimum Buyers Agency, your edge in a competitive market. You didn't have to do much for Frank Sinatra. He actually brought his own food. Just a chicken and rice soup.
It was, and it was part of the rider, and I'd never forget reading it and going, "You got to be kidding! He's going to bring his own chicken and rice Campbell soup," and he would mix it with Evian water, and it had to be served in a Royal Dalton, soup pot, sort of a little China bowls, and it was like quite incredible. Yeah.
Also, too, if I mention lemon myrtle tea, who's the performer?
Well, who isn't the performer would be the preferred statement, because I don't know too many artists that are singers that didn't like the lemon myrtle tea, because it's an Australian native plant that is just one of my favourites, and it's great. The citral is great for artists' singing throats, and so everybody from Tina Turner to Madonna to Jimmy Barnes and Ian Moss, and they all asked for lemon myrtle tea. My brother, many of the artists, Wendy Matthews, and just the list goes on and on. Vicar and Linda, and it is probably the best herbal tea for musicians. There used to be a tea bag called Throat Coat. It's an American product, and it has probably all sorts of different soothing things for the throat. But this totally stumped it. It was it was our ace in the hole, and we always had to have lemon myrtle tea. And I came did a little ground and used to give little cans away to the artists, and we always looked after them, and we became very famous for that. So
there's a beautiful picture of your daughters on stage with Michael Jackson. Man, that's the greatest picture ever.
That's my eldest daughter, Sammy. Yeah. Well, my youngest would have been there too, but she freaked out right at the last minute. They had that's good. I remember that photo. And so we were all ready to go on. It was in Perth. It was in the car park of the then stadium that they had, and every show they brought the Michael Jackson's crew would do a rehearsal with the locals, at school or something with the children, and we got asked by the production manager if we would like to bring, have our children perform, and so they did a little rehearsal and everything. So everything was fine in the rehearsal, and then came to go on stage. My youngest, she freaked out, so she didn't go on in the end. So
she'd be kicking herself now.
I think in the cookbook I had to put a little photo and of Emily at the same time, because it wasn't fair because she was supposed to be there. So I made sure that Emily got her photo in there as well. So
I can't believe I'm giving you all these questions, and these are surreal questions that people would love to be in. Like, I read somewhere you cooked for Michael Hutchence and Kylie Minogue when they were together, and your wife Jo gave him a massage.
Yes. Well, Jo and I used to be the dynamic duo, and she used to do Swedish masseusing, and I was the caterer at the studio, recording studio. So we would, I would cook up a meal, and before dinner they would have their massages, and she would. So we got quite famous to do that, and we were a great team for quite a while during the studios.
What was your dealings with Michael Hutchence like?
Oh, he was a great food lover, and just a really genuine person. He loved the studios, and he loved the recording studio that especially Rhino. So that they spent a lot of time in that studio, obviously. He was great to get to know him, and it was one of the most tragic things that could have ever happened to a band that was on their high, and we were quite devastated.
Where were you when you found out the news?
We were in I think we were in Cairns. I'd taken a small break. We were due to come back and do the catering for them at the State Theatre. They were starting off a small tour, and they were just doing some warm-up shows. And Yeah, and I got the phone call in Cairns, and we flew back straight away, and it was sort of brought our holiday to a quick finish. Yeah, it was very, very tragic.
Such a waste, wasn't it?
Certainly.
You would have been in a world that I suppose it would have been quite addictive, I suppose, and exciting. Was it hard to leave that and morph into into a different thing?
From catering?
Yeah.
Well, catering, it took its toll because of the amount of miles and being mobile, taking the whole operation from A, taking it to B, and then bringing it back to A. It was enormously, strenuous, and stressful, and we lost a lot of gear, and it was just hard work, and we gave it 12 years, 10 or 12, 10 or 12 good years, and built an incredible business. And so but there was a seasonality thing too. So I had this plan that, we would try and, maybe morph and join forces with someone that was doing corporate.
Yeah.
Because we just got sick of, making lots of hay for the summer periods or for the season, and then 4 months of the year I'd give it all back. So it was very tough to make a profit in the mobile catering business for the music industry back in the day, because there wasn't enough trade, because all the tours usually came in the summer times and when the weather was better, and there was very few bands coming out in the winter. So I morphed with a corporate catering, and that didn't work. We took over the Australian Technology Park, got all these other contracts, and it seemed like it was just exploding for a long time. But it wasn't. I wasn't happy. It was taking me away from the rock and roll, and it was bringing us into a direction I wasn't comfortable with. So we wanted out. So the only way of getting out was for them to just, I basically gave it to them, and I fled. And that was the best thing that we ever did. I got very little money for a lot of, but they took over, and I went to the Central Coast, and the rest is history.
Was there many tantrums from some of the big names
in catering?
Yeah, like in regards to the performers. No, Courtney Love apparently threw a plate of sandwiches at the big day out.
Oh, that was a horrible experience.
You obviously didn't cut the crust.
No respect. Respect.
You
for
didn't
the
cut the
caterers.
crusts off.
Oh, it was she just threw it everywhere. It was just awful. And it was like, you don't have to be like that. There was a couple of other, big day outs were quite notorious of bands trashing dressing rooms and losing it. It was. There's most artists are very, very down to earth and very sympathetic, and just real pleasure to look after. Yeah. But there's a couple of ones that I could do without. The amount of 12 hours worth of working, and then all of a sudden you look at and they've just trashed their food and didn't even eat it, or you spend all this time preparing the dressing rooms and they just trashed it. Motorhead, It's like, guys.
What did they do?
It was at the Horden Pavilion, and I remember their dressing room being quite trashed at the end of the night. But they'd yell down they'd get there, didn't even know which venue they were in. They'd say, "What fucking venue are we in?"
That's rock and roll.
It's rock and roll. Where's my elephant beer? My 8% elephant beer for filthy.
You wrote a book, Live and Cooking at Lizotte's, and have you got another book in you? I mean, it's beautiful. I've got to say, I've had this for the last 48 hours, and my partner Kelly, she loves it. She's like, "I want this book. I want you to buy me a book." So I've got to buy this for her for Christmas now.
Well, I don't know whether there's any left, Michael. I think they were all. I think that's on eBay.
I think you can get them on Amazon. So I'm gonna
eBay or Amazon.
I'm gonna have to buy one for her. So you're gonna have some royalty coming in.
Cool.
But I mean, was that enjoyable doing a book?
I had a ball. Yeah, and it was always something that I wanted to do, a tabletop, table cookbook, kind of, coffee table book, and it's an encompassment. It's a collection of 20 years of me catering for the music industry. So it was just a pleasure to do, and I did find someone to help me champion it. It was a woman called Karen Goody, and without her, it probably wouldn't have happened because I just couldn't get it over the line, and so she did a great deal with New Holland Publishing. And back in the day, it was kind of like one of the last times where books were still, it's hard yakka for publicists now, publishers now, and they're doing less and less and less because it's all so digital. So, it's putting it together took about 6 months to a year. Wow. Yeah, it was a great thing, and some great photography and just generally the stories, the anecdotes and things that just was a good fun exercise. Yeah, and had a great launch, and it was something, and we followed that up with two little CDs, and Menu 1 and Menu 2 with all of the artists that used to play in the restaurants, and that came out, and that's available on Spotify or Apple Music or something like that. But so some of the biggest names in music as well, and followed that up. Was a nice.
I actually presented you with a book I wrote the other day.
I haven't read it yet, Michael, but
it's a cookbook as well.
Yeah,
but not my food, obviously. But I did it for it was an Indian restaurant, an Indian family that came out from India, early '80s, started a restaurant in Balmain, and just went from rags to riches. And now they cater for, again, the same, it's sort of similar in a way, but different. They cater for Arnold Schwarzenegger and prime ministers, state premiers, presidents. And the funny thing about it, the thing they're proud of the most is that they're the official caterer for the Indian cricket team when they go around Australia. It's that's all that matters.
Yeah, well, they're cricket mad.
To them, Yeah. But just in regards to your mum, she also wrote a book as well.
Yes, my beautiful mother,
Teresa,
before she died,
Lizotte,
and she learned how to write, and she did a little writing course, and she was very, very serious about it. So she knew that she had to do a certain amount of research and learning to get the flow of the book, and it's come out. It's a beautiful little book, and it never got published, and it's something that I would love to think that maybe one day someone could. I don't know what the whole process is quite
well. That's another thing you can do in your retirement.
Well, I want to hit my brothers and sisters up to put it onto an audio book format, and I'm going to put to them that maybe we all take a couple of chapters each and do an audio book for longevity and into the future for our children and our
I was actually
generations.
Looking at it the other day, and I was sort of flicking through, and all of a sudden there was this page that had like a little love heart on it. I went, I've got to read this. Obviously, it means something. So I'm just going to read a little part of the chapter. By now, Hank and I were not only in love, but also good friends. He supported me in all my frustrations with nursing. He listened to all my little antidotes, praised me, and gave me just enough sympathy when I complained. Oh, he was such a good listener. Our courtship was now 2 years old, and by today's standards, we should have long ago jumped into bed together. I only know that I'm glad we waited. Premarital sex has become the norm nowadays, but I truly believe soon we will revert to these old standards, not because of religion, but because there is a natural order of things in life. During these courtship days, we sowed the seeds of friendship that would last all our married life. That's beautiful.
Beautiful words, isn't it?
And it sort of sums them up, just in regards to the people that they were. Obviously, I didn't meet them, but it's almost like they wanted to get the foundations right.
Yes. Before
they moved on. They made up for lost time with 7 kids. But
yes. We always said, well, you mustn't have had a television. And then Dad would always say, well, I was a television repairman. So I had plenty of televisions everywhere, but they were all broken. So yes, she was a great writer, and she had a great statement that we all live by, or try and live by anyway. But it goes. You have two ears and one mouth, and you should use them in that proportion. And so that was one of her beautiful statements as well. So we always try and live by that.
I think it's a great idea, that audio book thing. You know, I think that'd really. I think the family would love that. Just in regards to the venues, when you obviously you had DY, Kincumber, Lambton all going at the same time. You mentioned before it was like spitting plates, keeping everyone happy. How many times did you go up and down that freeway?
Countless, and many a car change of a car, and the amount of petrol that I used to use. But some nights I'd start in DY and put on a show. Please welcome Vicar and Linda Bull, and then I'd get in the car and drive to Kincumber and close the show. Close the show off. So it was.
But Ben, saying that too, I know you mentioned earlier that you love being at the venues. Could you have just sort of gone, I'm going to be at this venue this night and this one next night? But it was almost like you had to be.
Oh, it was a lot of the time. It was, I would definitely take. It would be a matter of where I was needed most. My best nights were where I could really be where I wanted to be, but that wasn't always the case. Unfortunately, it was towards the end. It was basically where the wheel had fallen off is where I needed to be to put it back on. So, the good nights was great because I could indulge myself in an artist that I really wanted to listen to and to go and say hi to. Yeah.
It's almost like you took, leading into that, it's like you took everything your experience from catering for the big stars, knowing that people love music, love entertainment, good food, the perfect marriage. You sort of knew what would work in a more intimate venue. Yeah,
the venues that we created were there's a definite advantage for the audience in a small venue. I always remember a lot of artists are saying, God, you can hear a pin drop. And for the artist, sometimes it freaks them out and other times it's just exactly what they want because there's very few times where they can just have, the pub environment was always fine for a rock band and, but if you really wanted to hone your craft and listen to songs and songwriters, those songwriters, those artists that really do have a story to tell and a quiet audience is just amazing, my brother started doing theatres just recently, not recently, but a lot more these days.
But he was against it at first, wasn't he?
Yes, well, he was against doing dinner shows, but he loves the theatre thing now, where people do listen to him because people are just screaming and shouting and just not paying attention really. But once they get into a theatre environment where they've got to be quiet and the respect is there, it's wonderful. And then you've got the other complete side. And I remember, who was it? Dave Faulkner and Brad Shepherd from the Hoodoo Gurus. I coaxed them into doing some stripped back duo shows, and I remember the time where Brad said to me, he said, Brian, he said, I fucking hate it. He said, it's fucking too intimidating. He said, they're right there, sitting in front of me. He said, I'm used to having fucking Marshall stacked behind me and fucking jumping around and. He said, fucking, what did you get me? Why did I agree to do this?
I think I read somewhere Jimmy Barnes actually did a tribute from when you were closing it, when you decided to get out. And it was something like, it's so intimate, I feel like I'm sitting on their fucking lap.
Yes. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That was Kincumber. So,
right,
closer, I'd sit on your fucking lap. Yeah. Any closer and I'd be sitting on your fucking lap. That was the statement, yeah. It was a great statement.
But the funny thing about it is that in Newcastle, I always knew of Lizotte's. Funny enough, and don't judge me, I never went there for some reason. I didn't go. But I know a lot of people that also knew of you, and I think it's because of the fact that Mark, Diesel become successful in the industry, and you see these massive gigs, coming to this theatre, going, wow, Brian must be getting these from Mark, but obviously from what we've just talked about today. This is nothing. Well, I'm sure he would have got a few gigs for you, but it's purely from the contacts that you've acquired throughout these years.
Yeah, it was the promoters that started. You know, when I first started in the recording studio, we got to know lots of musicians then.
Yeah.
And a lot of those musicians all ended up, most of them have all ended up playing in my rooms. And, you know, it wasn't favours I was trying to create. It was basically I wanted it to be a financially viable thing for them. So that's why, you know, when we started doing this, I made sure that we were all, number one, paid them on time, and you know, we were always very famous for as soon as the gig was done, you know, in the following days the invoice would come and that would be paid, you know. So we were always known as good payers, which always helped with a lot of venues weren't that case, and they were always late coming, and you know, some of them not even ever getting there.
Yeah.
So we you know, that was and the fee, because we were small venues, was difficult because you couldn't get that many people in to buy a ticket. So the general public, to be commended over the years, that they did pay a slightly higher premium to see these bands in a small, you know, intimate vibe. So yeah, it had to be good for the band, you know, and I always tried to make it that way, you know.
Was there any disasters, what you just would have mentioned, where packed house and no one turns up?
I remember Ian Moss, we did 3 shows, but I remember his manager at the time said that Ian doesn't really want to do 3 in a row this year. He wants to just do 2 and then have a day off and, you know, save his voice and whatever. But we definitely committed to 3, and we sold 3 sellout shows. And on the 3rd night, we were, you know, I remember, and I was in DY, and my manager at the time in King Cumber said, "Brian, Mossy's not here yet." I said, "Oh, it's Mossy time. It's okay. He'll turn up." And because Ian's notorious for being, you know, it's just Mossy time, you know. And sure enough, though, it was 8 o'clock. The support act went on, and still no Ian. It was like, whoa, okay, 8:30, 9 o'clock. By 9:30, when the show was supposed to start, still no Ian. So they had to say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're really sorry, but you know, Ian hasn't turned up." But yeah, he was absolutely he was completely devastated that he'd forgotten that he had that 3rd show.
Oh, so he forgot, right?
Yeah, he just forgot, and but you know, he came back and did the show, obviously, and we had a great night, and it was So, but that's probably one of the only times. But most of the time, the musicians they're just wonderful, you know, of their time and for playing small venues. You know, so I know that they don't have to a lot of the time. So they agreed they'd do, you know, our room, and then they go and play a much larger venue the next night. So, but we always looked after them. So hopefully their memories of us will, you know, prevail. We'll go down. The history is there.
Well, it was a great picture of Jimmy Barnes and Keith Urban on the stage, like that.
Yeah,
like,
that was in DY. Yep.
I mean, to get them.
That was a pretty special night. I remember never seeing so many phones out. It was just incredible because I remember, because I knew he was coming, but nobody else did. And we had this booth table at the reception, right at the back of the restaurant. And I remember Nicole and him arriving, and then they went through and everybody was seated, and they were all looking at the stage, obviously. Yeah. So there was very few people that had to get up and go the opposite direction. So they were safe in this one little booth table. Nobody knew that they were there. When he went up on stage, he walked straight past, and then everybody, you know, and then they realised. And once they realised, it was like the phones just came up, and it was just one after the other. Like it was just plastered.
Did you know what that was what was about to happen?
Yes, yeah, because I was the only privy one. Even my staff, they didn't want my staff to know either. So we got Keith and Nicole in and sat them down. It was, and I think they sat with Jane Barnes as well.
Wow.
So, it was pretty. Yeah, it was a special night.
There's also a good. We got a video of we had the Hoff.
Oh, that was
David
a
Hasselhoff.
very memorable session.
Like, here we go. How did you get the Hoff to Lambton?
Oh, I tell you, well, a very, very special lady called Mel Murray, who's a publicist here in Newcastle. She put me onto the promoter, and he only did the 2 shows that I know of in New South Wales, and they were both at our restaurants. He did Newcastle and DY, and in Newcastle he ended up the show. He's quite the entertainer. He's quite a singer, and it was a great show.
He did Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, see, did you know that? No.
Yes.
Wow. That's a committed role.
I know.
It was nothing like his show, I can tell you right now.
No.
Yeah. He had the girls from the Newcastle Jets, the cheerleaders, the Newcastle Jets cheerleaders, or the Newcastle Knights cheerleaders, and then in DY he had the Manly Eagles cheerleaders.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean he had them?
Well, he had them perform with him on stage. Sorry. Yes. Yeah.
We just wanted to get that.
Got that clarified.
We just wanted to make sure that. This isn't just a gym. It's where limits get broken. A place where community comes together, sweat turns into strength, and every drop is progress. No excuses, no egos, just results. Join Fitstop Newcastle today, a start to a better you. You've had also some other great performers. You've had, I think we've got a montage of Daryl Braithwaite, Leo Sayer, and Chad Morgan.
Oh, Chad Morgan was a legendary.
Wow.
He was awesome.
I love Chad Morgan. My mum actually bought me an album of Chad Morgan.
He's classic. I mean, you probably don't like his music, but
making Davy Crockett hats out of tails we chopped off cats.
It's just bizarre. Scrubby Creek, you know.
And we also
Sheik from the Scrubby Creek.
Sheik from Scrubby. Yeah, we've also got Mick Fleetwood.
Yeah, that was a great night.
No, that's Brian. Anyway, stay with that, Brian Cad.
Beautiful Mr. Cad.
What do you love about Brian?
What do I love about him is just his general sense of humour and just his love of life. And I wish him, if he ever gets to listen to this, Brian, I wish you all the best, and I hope he's still in recovery mode, but he's doing okay. Apparently, he's still, but he's struggling. He had that stroke, and hopefully one day he'll be able to sing a note again, because that guy is he's one of Australia's.
They know how to perform, don't they?
Wonderful musicians and entertainers.
A little story on him. I listened to an interview with Brian and someone. I think this is going back a few years ago now, but he had a near-death experience in Queensland, where I think he was living on the Gold Coast for a while, and he was going across that. It's a little river. I think it's Tallabadgera Creek or something like that, where there's a little bridge, and it was raining cats and dogs, and everything was flooding. And it was it was like out of the movies, where he's driving across this bridge, and the bridge just collapses. Whoa. And he's all of a sudden he's in the water.
No, I didn't know that.
Going down, and it was like the movie where you start sinking and the water's coming up.
Wow.
This is early 80s, and he said, "You know what saved?" He goes, "Well, what did you do?" He said, "Well, what saved me is the fact that I just wound the window down, got out, and." He said, "But if that happened now,
with electrics,
I'd be like pressing buttons.
Nothing would happen."
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always been a big problem for
technology.
With the flooding. That's why they say don't go through flooding waters.
Yeah. Also got Mick Fleetwood, I think.
That was wonderful experience.
I know you're not a big man, but this makes you look like an absolute giant.
He was a giant. He was a giant. He wouldn't leave the restaurant. He was 4:00 in the morning. I think we got him out. He just loved the place and his crew, and they all sat back, and we had a couple of bottles of red wine, and he just loved it. He ended up buying paintings off the wall, and it was just the most wonderful experience.
Wow.
And I remember him really enjoying the intimacy and the concept. And I think he told me that he was looking at doing his own little dinner show restaurant back in Maui.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, it did happen, and
Wow.
it did Fleetwood's.
Inspired by
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, inspired, but that's what he
Yeah.
already said that he was thinking, and I think that's why he really just loved the vibe of the place and
Yeah.
how big it was. So, and unfortunately, during that last cyclone or hurricane
Yeah.
they had, it wiped wiped the restaurant out. So
I was never a big fan of Fleetwood Mac until I read Mick Fleetwood's book. And you start to realise the dynamics of this band. There was times when they just didn't talk to each other, but they just turned up to the gig and it was seamless, and then they just went their separate ways again. And there's more respect, and I actually enjoy their music now. It's funny then sometimes when you read up on or do some research on bands that you're probably not into, AC/DC is another one for me. I was never into them.
such history, and the amount of players that came and went from those bands is quite incredible. It's like it's just the history is there. So to have someone of that caliber on a small stage, and I remember seeing these drum kits arrive, in road cases, and this big truck arrive, and all of these road cases get wheeled off and into the restaurant. It was just the most exciting day that I'd had in probably ever.
Yeah.
Just to have someone rock royalty like that play in the restaurant, and I remember selling out that show so quick. It was literally within an hour or two we just sold out.
Wow.
And ringing the promoter and saying, do they have a day off where we could do this again one more night? And he rang back a couple of hours later, and he said, Brian, they'd love to do next Monday. So 2 Mondays in a row.
Wow.
And I think
I
they
didn't
worked
realise that.
6 days out of 7. They worked the Mick Fleetwood Blues Band on that particular tour. And and we did another sellout show, and it was 2 shows. It was just incredible.
Was it another 4 a.m. finish?
Well, that was the 4 a.m.
okay.
finish. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the one that they end up taking instruments off the wall, and they just hammed it up. It was a really great night.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like sometimes some of those things it would have been, not that they would allow it, but just to somehow video some of these impromptu jam sessions by some of these guys.
I've got those memories in my head thinking, gee, it would be great if I filmed that, or I've got footage sometimes that I've taken on the night, but then I've been so mesmerised by the performances where I'm listening, and they'll say wonderful things about how it is wonderful and what a wonderful how lucky the Newcastle is to have this venue and all those sort of beautiful statements, and then I realise, oh shit, I haven't got that on tape.
Can you just say that
say
again?
it again.
2017, it wasn't a great year. You were diagnosed with prostate cancer. You had 2 brothers that also had it. Was that always a worry for you regarding?
Oh, when I first got diagnosed, it was.
I mean,
it was
with
totally
your brothers.
devastating. With my brother,
Was that after or before for them?
believe it or not, they got diagnosed not very long before me.
Right.
So when I ended up getting diagnosed, I was like, well, and they both did separate things. One of my brothers had a prostatectomy, and the other one had some radiation, and so I just went and did my homework and I studied as much as I possibly could for a 4 or 5 month period, and asked my doctors, am I going to die soon? Is this a death sentence? And they said, no, it's a slow growing cancer. So I said, you've got time. And I made my decision on my journey to do just a wait and see and
because you had an
surveillance.
operation booked to get rid of your prostate.
I did, and so with that decision not to, and here I am 8 years later, still with the same situation where I'm just watching and seeing, and it's at the moment it's still at bay and still, fingers crossed.
Did that put a new a perspective on things, like really
Most
rocky
definitely.
to the core?
Yeah, to start off with, and then now I still look at and I still wake up every morning, but it's not something that I'm going to die of cancer. I've got this positive attitude, and I'm not going to say that if I will deal with it if the time comes, and I'm doing regular checks to make sure that things aren't moving. But as long as they're staying quite dormant, and it's not in any hurry at the moment to do something, I get told by my doctors that you're still okay for the time being, and just keep checking. So that that would be my recommendation for anybody that's doing the same thing as I have. You just don't overrule doing the right thing at the right time. But for me, I made that decision that I wouldn't go drastic measures of intervention.
Another tough time, COVID, a bloody tough time for any business, let alone a business that's got food and entertainment attached to it.
Yeah, COVID really we were about to have the best year of our business career that year, and it was standing up to be one of the best years, financially and for happiness and just general workings of the restaurant. Was just we were really enjoying life, and then that hit, and I'll never forget it. It was a night where I think it was Swanee did a show, and basically we took him off stage, said goodnight to people, and then went to bed that night, and then the Sunday morning Gladys gave us the news.
Everything changed.
And it sure did. So we weathered it pretty well.
Because people were saying,
proud
of
our achievement to stick by it, and we dug our heels in, and the general public, again commending them for having the balls to say we're with you guys, and we're going to stick around, and we don't want our tickets back, and we want to keep them, and we want that show to happen, and we just went into the incredible administration nightmare that it was. I had some great staff at the time, and there's a woman called Suze who was our manager for many years, and the passion that she had and the other staff to keep that rolling, and to administer as much as we could to ensure that people kept their tickets, and the amount of time that I spent on the phone with promoters and agents and artists to change the date, then that we'd get to that date, and
which
it
is
still lockdown,
which was a nightmare even in normal times.
Well, yeah, I think the record was either Dragon or Killer Queen. I think it was Dragon. Dragon had the biggest record for the amount of days that it took and how many times that the show got postponed, and they waited for their tickets to come up, and finally they did the show. And it was,
and the public
whole 2 years or something.
Wow. And the public support too. I mean, a lot of people were saying, you want some crowdfunding and all that sort of stuff, but you was like, no, directed to the artists.
Yes. And we made sure that, our capacity went from 200 to 50. Okay, so we're allowed to do a show with 50. So, we told the general public, if you want a ticket, it's going to be expensive, but the artist gets paid and they can still keep living, And that was the whole thing. It was to make sure that the artist had and then the government stepped in as well. So I've got to commend them. They gave us a lot of help. The JobKeeper and all of that as well. But by and large, it's the general public that kept us going, because they didn't. If we'd had to refund all those tickets and cancelled the shows, we would have been out the back door. So and so many restaurants and so many venues were, because they couldn't manage it like we did.
But coming out of it, it's almost people had this thirst, this hunger to watch artists straight off it. It was like a tsunami of like, we want entertainment.
And the emotion, I'll never forget, artists like Kate Sobrano and Katie Noonan and Casey Chambers and those three women in particular, when they first did their first shows, there was tears and the emotion it was very, very emotional night to see them to get back on the stage, because they hadn't played for 2 years. And so, it's to take their craft away is an awful, it's a very daunting thing for a musician to not play live.
Another random question. You did a pilot for a TV series with Tim Farriss from INXS, where you had to catch a fish? Yeah, you take it away. What?
Where did you? Yeah, I do have I've got a video a VHS video that I've got to get redone, but it was a pilot for a television show called With a Twist, and I did a couple of pilots. I did one with my brother. And then this one, I talked INXS, Tim Farriss from INXS, into doing it, because he was a great boating man.
Yeah.
So he had a great cruiser, and he said, I'll take you out on a boat. And so I got the film crew that I was using at the time, and we went out and was, cooking with Tim Farriss on board, and we'd go fishing, and then I'd do this, beautiful dish and cook it on board. But unfortunately, we didn't catch any fish. So
that really was a twist.
Yeah, it was a twist, and so I had to quickly fly into Manly Wharf and go to the fish market and pick out a fish, and then put it on the hook and then bring it out. It was like it was just the classic clanger, But we got to
that should have actually been added in the pilot. It would have actually probably that's what would have taken off.
And so we never got to chance to finish that one off. The wheel fell off the whole concept, and we couldn't get someone to champion that thing. But I did finish an actual pilot with my brother that we did in northern New South Wales while we were on tour once, and it was we did lemon myrtle prawns with. Macadamia king prawns with lemon myrtle mayonnaise, and it's in the book. Yeah. So I did that one, and we went start to finish, and we got the prawns from a trawler and up the coast somewhere in Coffs Harbour, and I went out to the macadamia farm because I had a friend with a macadamia farm in Maclean, and we had an absolute ball. So and then I just couldn't quite get anybody to get it over the line. But I had this big concept that I wanted to be a TV and apply music and have that
it's very hard
food.
To really. That's another thing. It's in the television industry is trying to pitch to the correct crowd. And I've pitched a few, and I was just surprised at just the data in regards to how many people of a certain age group watch at each hour of the day. And it's almost like you pitch a show to the executives and they're like, well, what time do you want this on? And the first thing you say is, prime time. This is great. This is my baby, And they go, no. You've got to, this will be 4:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. And guess what? Your show won't fit the demographic of the people watching at that time. And all of a sudden you start skewering the show that you once thought was great, and then you're going, this is shit now.
Well, I never got that far, Michael, but it's maybe one day I'll revisit something in some shape or form. I'd be happy if I ever got a job. Maybe it would be just talent wrangling at a festival or something like that. But the TV thing, I think I'll stay away from.
Just staying on your brother, Mark Diesel, he's worked hard in his career, and in some families there'd probably be a bit of jealousy, but in the Lizotte's family, it seems like it's anything but. Everyone's proud of each other.
Oh, God, the achievement. I mean, coming from America and being American-born, all of us, is we have a lot to thank Australia for. Australia's been very, very good to my family, and we're very proud of being Australians, and we would never. Most of us, are very happy to be living in this country. There's no two ways about it. It's the land of the lucky. We're all proud, and every one of us has done great things and brought up beautiful children that are all successful as well. And so, we've got no complaints. It's a wonderful, and we love each other very much. There's 7 of us, and we're all. We might not be close in distance, but in love, there's no bad blood. Which is wonderful for a family of 7.
You can tell. You sold Lizotte's, the venue in Lambton, back in 2023. 15 years. Do you miss it?
Oh, I miss all the good stuff. Yeah, I miss the music. I miss the camaraderie and just the general, the good times. The staffing and the hard work. I was ready for a break. And Joe and I both. We will never regret, calling it when we did. It was the right time, and if it ever comes back in, it'll be from a different tack, but it definitely won't be another restaurant.
Well, I mean, I suppose you've seen so many, you've done so many things. I mean, it was one thing I read up. You once catered for 500 in a circus tent at Darling Harbour. How did you pull that off?
Well, catering things. Yeah, catering. We did some pretty wacky catering jobs. I mean, and you just go with it. It was a cocktail party, and for 500. I remember prepping that in a storeroom at the Rhinoceros recording studio. We were threading 500 chicken skewers and in the tape room. Well, that's for In Excess's tapes were all.
Well, that's one thing you wouldn't miss. Look, behind every great man is a great woman, Joe. She's also had a ringside seat with you.
Oh, we had some snow on us that way. That was Tasmania somewhere.
That's the firm.
That's she's my rock. There's no two ways about it. There's a 30. We had our 32nd wedding anniversary last year on Rottnest Island, and on tour. And it's the 24/7 now. It's we've take the test of time. I remember an episode at DY once that she'll probably have a laugh that I'm telling this story, but I never forget the stress that we were under for a while there, running the 3 restaurants, and I had what was I probably had a couple of others and didn't know that they were panic attacks, but I had a really particularly bad panic attack at DY one night, and we were very short-staffed, and it was a sellout show, and I was running around. I think it was James Rain or something. It was just mayhem. People big drinkers and couldn't keep up with it, and it was just mayhem. And I just had a meltdown, and I went up to her, and she was running around like a blue-ass fly, like all of us were. And I went, "Honey, I think I'm having a panic attack." And she looked at me and said, "What?" And she just took a minute and went, You go outside and you come back in and you can't have a panic attack now. And she just let me have it. And I was like, no fucking sympathy whatsoever. And I went outside. I went, fuck, all right, yep, okay, yep, yes, darling. And it was like came back in and fucking just dealt with it. It was just
This is a tough one. What's your favourite memory out of everything?
God, that's a huge.
I know, and it could be anything. Michael. It could be anything. I know.
In general, I think one of the most. Rephrase that again. How you asked that?
What's your favourite memory? And it could be it could be from an act. It could be just from a family. Perspective.
Favourite memory in business would be something like how I felt when one of my favourite artists played a particular song and the atmosphere of the restaurant and getting goose pimples. You know, I think we talked about goose pimples the other day and how when that comes up and you get that feeling of what music does to people, that's probably one of the memories of all of those memories. Those nights where we felt just feel incredibly privileged and lucky to do what we do and to be able to look after people's social lives like we did. I think that's probably a big one in business anyway, and knowing that we're like the community and giving a place for musos to play.
Well, Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Incredible Lives because you've had an incredible life. I don't think we've had anyone that comes close to this so far.
Michael, thank you. I have, I feel very, very privileged and very lucky, and it's not over yet. And
well, we've gone through about 5 different professions. Aged care,
I'm going into
Meals on Wheels.
I'm going into golf. That's it. Yeah, I'm going to be a professional golfer.
Look at that, Dave Scoop. Brian, thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks, Michael.
Happy?
Yeah.